Well, I'm Sigan Hartley, and I'm an associate professor in the School of Human Ecology and have been a Wasteman Center investigator for the past 6 years. And today I get the honor of sharing some insights that we have learned from families who have been in our study for the past 3 years. So language is important, and today I'm going to use the term autism spectrum. I know that many of you in this room may have a different preferred term, and so I'll try to mirror whatever term you use in your questions back to you. But by autism spectrum, I'm referring to a spectrum of conditions that all share commonalities in terms of some certain characteristics, but they're going to share these to different degrees, and they're going to present in very different ways. So the commonalities that they're going to share are difficulties or really just unusual ways of communicating or interacting in the world, repetitive behaviors or restricted or narrowed interests, or maybe just sort of getting stuck and doing things a certain way and having trouble shifting from that certain way. Sensory sensitivities, so having very strong reactions to sounds or tastes or certain touches. And to some degree that these characteristics are going to impair or make it more difficult in terms of social relationships, school, work, or other areas of life functioning. Now, I always like to point out that currently we estimate that about 1 in 68 children in the U.S. would fall on the spectrum, but this number has widely fluctuated in the past and is likely to continue to widely fluctuate in the future. And that's because we're really just drawing sort of an arbitrary line in terms of where we think and consider people who have certain levels of these characteristics, whether they are or are not on the spectrum. So we have been doing a study, as I mentioned, for the past 3 years. We call it Family Outcomes in Autism Spectrum. This is a study funded by the National Institute of Health. And really the overall purpose of our study is to learn from families and to be able to understand how some of the unique parenting experiences of having a child on the spectrum are going to shape family dynamics in both positive and desirable ways, but also in ways that might be less desirable. And how we can learn from the families who are thriving and really doing great, what is it about the processes or about the mechanisms or about the supports that those families are getting that we can better understand to better serve families who may not be thriving. So first, if anyone in the room is in this study, I want to give you a big thank you because our study can be very cumbersome. We ask a lot of families. We have parents complete questionnaire packets, we interview them, we observe parents. Teachers also give us some information. And at the first time point of the study, we also included a 14-day daily diary. And today I'm going to be sharing some information from that daily diary, as well as some information from the interviews that we have done over the years. So who's in our study? Well, originally we had 189 families who had a child on the spectrum who enrolled in the study. And these numbers are going to vary a little bit because some families didn't participate in all aspects of the study. But on average, moms and dads were in their late 30s, early 40s. We had 25% of moms and 32% of dads who did not have a college degree, with the remainder having a college degree or beyond. The child on the spectrum was age 5 to 12 at the beginning of the study, with an average age of about 7. And we have more males and females in line with who is currently getting a label on the spectrum currently. So these are families who are in Wisconsin. We have a pretty good representation of the different counties in Wisconsin, although the majority are really going to come, I don't know if you can see this highlighted area, from the southern and central regions of the state. Now, these are wonderful families, and it has been a fabulous experience to get to hear about their smart, funny, and loving children. And in interviews, parents reflect to us a lot of the parenting joys that they have. So these are some quotes from parents of children on the spectrum. And really, these are quotes from an open-ended interview. We just said, talk about your child for 5 minutes. So we wanted to provide no direction, so we just were interested to hear what they naturally were going to talk about. And we get a lot of joys of parenting that you can see reflected in some of these quotes. I don't think I could be any prouder of the child. Every time he accomplishes and does something and goes above and beyond. When people say he's limited and can't do, and then he achieves, right? He's just a great kid, probably one of the better things that have ever happened to me. He makes me laugh quite a bit. He makes me smile. I do know that I'm a better person. I'm more patient and much more compassionate for other people's situations, a positive impact on my life. And we've actually seen this theme emerge a lot of people saying that they have become a better person in a variety of different ways from having parented this child. He's a real joy to have in our house. I think he's really a blessing to humanity by being here with his loving personality. And I don't think that I would change anything about him. So even though there's been some things that have been kind of challenging, I think overall these are the things that make him who he is, and so it's been a good experience. And so we see a huge range of parenting joys. On the other side, we also hear stories of the trials of parenting, right? And again, we're going to see a huge range in what types of things that parents bring up. So some parents will bring up things related to helping that child learn how to regulate and manage their behaviors and emotions. And these are things that may not come as naturally to someone on the spectrum. So we struggle quite a lot over sleep. I think that was kind of mirrored in a comment. When she needs to go to bed, when she needs to get up. It's frustrating because with certain behaviors, it does not matter what we do. We have tried everything that we can think of, everything that has been recommended to us from friends, professionals, parents. We also see themes related to just the worries about this child, right? So we see a quote from a mom here. I worry sometimes about the way that other kids treat him because he doesn't follow social conventions, right? So make the worry about wanting your child to have good experiences, and also the frustration because, quite frankly, we live in a world that can be intolerant of differences and may not be set up to really appreciate the way that your child learns and the way that your child views the world and interacts with the world. We also see some trials just related to things around autism, right? This is a quote from a father who says, the difference with autism that I see is paperwork and appointments, right? All those hours in ABA therapy, all those hours in IEP meetings, all these other stuff, that can be a big challenge. It's a big time commitment, right? And that in itself can be sort of a trial. Also in this last quote reflected from a mother, you can think about some of the trials in terms of the ways that it shapes families. And so this mother is bringing up how there's a lot of things that we would love to be able to do that we really can't do, like vacations, just going out, socializing more, having people over to the house. And so there might be some trials just in terms of how you shape your life that may be different. So we're interested in understanding how both these joys, but also these trials, are going to influence family dynamics and also be influenced by family dynamics. And one of the family dynamics that we're interested in is looking at parents-couple relationship. So what are the daily experiences like of parents who have a child on the spectrum? Is this different? Is it not different than if you don't have a child on the spectrum? And this slide has a lot of words. Don't worry about grasping all the words here. It's hard to read. And I'm going to quickly go over the methodology of the studies that I'm going to talk about today. But at the end of the talk, I'll refer you back to the papers. So if you're interested, you can go back and fully read about the methodologies. And I'm also happy to answer questions. But today I'm going to talk about two recent studies where we looked at daily couple experiences. And here we looked at it in the 174 families who had a child on the spectrum who completed that 14-day daily diary. And we also have a comparison group of 179 families who have a child without an identified or suspected neurodevelopmental condition. Now I always think with comparison groups it's tricky, right? Is there an appropriate comparison group? Is this the best comparison group? No, I don't think I would ever argue that. This is really one benchmark. It allows us to see what is unique about parenting a child on the spectrum and what's not unique, what's just about parenting. So think of it as kind of a way to just provide one benchmark. So both of these groups did this daily diary where every day they would complete a survey link, where they were emailed a link and they would complete the same set of questions. Or we would give parents an iPod Touch that didn't require any internet access in case they didn't have internet access at home, and they could do the survey there. So one of the things we wanted to look at was how much time parents were spending with their partner. And so, you can see kind of reflected in some of those quotes, they were mentioning that they have a lot going on in their day. And so we wanted to know, is this going to differ between our groups? So every day of that 14 days, they would tell us how many hours, how many minutes they spent with their partner. What we found is there was a group difference. So parents with a child on the spectrum spent less time on any given day, on average, than did parents in the comparison group. Again, these are averages. We have much more variability among our parents who have a child on the spectrum than we do across the parents who have a child on the spectrum in the comparison group. But this would just give you a gauge to say that on average, if you had any family who had a child on the spectrum versus a family who didn't, you would see a little bit of a difference. This was about a 21-minute difference a day on average. So then we wanted to look at, okay, so if they're spending less time, does this matter? What types of interactions might be missing or maybe not? Maybe they're just doing fewer of the same. So one thing we looked at is partner support. So we had a couple of questions that asked whether they felt like their partner supported them in managing life demands. So these specifically asked whether they felt like their partner helped them problem solve day-to-day challenges, right? Who's going to grocery shop? Who's going to make dinner? Who's going to get Susie to soccer? How are we going to manage all this stuff? And did your spouse kind of help you with figure out those daily demands? Here, I think we see a nice strength. That even though they spent less time with their partner, we see no group difference in terms of their experience with partner support. So parents with a child on the spectrum felt equally supported in handling everyday demands, as did parents in the comparison group. And with both families here, we see pretty high levels. So they were well above the mean on this scale. So they were feeling like their partner really was there to support them to day-to-day challenges. And going back to quotes, here again are these quotes from this open-ended question where families on the spectrum, and I think this really comes through. They really felt like they were working together as a team, they were both there to support one another, and they were getting all of these demands met, right? So he's always there for me, we make a great team. When I get overwhelmed, partner talks me through it, together we somehow get it done. When she gets the groceries and then I watch the kids, so we kind of piggyback it. So it is like a teamwork thing. And so they really are feeling supported at a daily level. We also looked at partner closeness. So this is not so much whether you felt like they were actually giving you assistance in problem-solving daily life challenges, but this was, do you just feel close and connected? Did you have time to just share your feelings and thoughts? So not me saying that I need to do X, Y, and Z, how can I get it done, I need your help, but me just saying, hey, this was my experience at work today. Hey, I'm really excited about the Packer playoff game tomorrow. Let's talk about that. Or, hey, here are my worries about what's going on in the world, right? So really just connecting. And here we did see a group difference. So we saw it in fathers. So fathers who had a child on the spectrum on any given day felt like they had less of that closeness, less of that intimacy, less of that sort of ability to just share thoughts and feelings with their partner than did fathers in the comparison group. This wasn't a huge difference. It was about an 8% reduction on the questions that we asked for fathers with a child on the spectrum. We didn't see a difference in mothers, though. Although, as you can see, there was a mild difference. Was not significant, but it was kind of mirrored the same pattern as in fathers. And so what this sort of suggests to me is that, what's the result of that 21 minutes less a day? Well, it's not that they're not getting the day-to-day challenges met, but maybe it's just they don't have time to sort of sit and share thoughts and feelings and build that intimacy and closeness with their partner. So here are some quotes, I think, that kind of, whenever we find something, we like to go back to the quotes to say, okay, well, let's understand this, what's going on. And so here are, again, some quotes from our families who have a child on the spectrum. And I think you can kind of see this mirrored, right? So we cannot do the things that a lot of people take for granted. It's been a year since we went on an outing without the kids. I just wish I had more time and energy left for partner once I get finished with my work, responsibilities, and parenting child. I feel like there's not much left for partner. So not only sort of maybe they spend less time together, but I think with this quote, suggests that at least for some parents, feeling a little bit emotionally drained, that, you're tired at the end of the day, so you're not taking that extra time to sort of, connect with your partner. Maybe that's harder for these families. We rarely do anything fun. I think just because of time constraints, my parents are the only babysitters that we have, because you can't just get a babysitter for someone who doesn't know autism or your child. That's really hard. I wish we had more time together, but I understand what we have to do to keep child supported and keep our house and family and everything afloat requires a lot of separate activities. We're kind of just two roommates with kids in the house, but I mean, when we do get a chance to have alone time, we get along, and it's kind of nice to reconnect. So I also think, it's not that these couples have sort of this animosity built up that's inhibiting this partner closeness. They talk about some of these constraints that may be limiting them from being able to have the time to share and connect. Finally, we looked at different types of positive and negative interactions these couples were having every day. So in terms of some of the negative couple interactions, these were things like I was angry or frustrated at my partner today, I made a critical comment to my partner today, I avoided or ignored my partner today, or I purposely didn't do something that I knew they wanted me to do today. And we can all probably relate to that one, right? And the positive couple interactions were things like I hugged, kissed, or had sex with my spouse today. I had a fun, enjoyable conversation with my spouse today. I shared a joke with my spouse today. Or we did something fun together today. And so here we just looked at the frequency. Did these happen? How many days did these happen over the 14 days? To see if there was any sort of group difference. So the good news, what we saw is there was absolutely no group difference between families who had a child on the spectrum and families in the comparison group on negative couple interactions. And this was true for mothers and fathers. So it's not as if these couples were more angry or frustrated with each other. It's not as if they were ignoring or avoiding each other more often. We had similar rates, and for both groups it was about one negative couple interaction a day. So we had a huge range though. Some we had all the way up to the 8, but most it was the 1 was our average. So that's good news. We did see a group difference though in positive couple interactions. So parents who had a child on the spectrum, and this was true for both mothers and fathers, reported engaging in fewer positive couple interactions on any given day than did parents in the comparison group. And one way I think you can kind of think about this is thinking about the ratio of positive to negative couple interactions. So on average in any one given day, you can think of our parents with a child on the spectrum, they had about 1 negative couple interaction and about 3 positive couple interactions. Our comparison group had about 1 negative interaction to over 4 positive couple interactions. They were engaging in more of the positive couple interactions. Now I think in thinking about sort of the implication of this, you can think about experts on the marital world or the couple relationship world more broadly. And a lot of what we know about what differentiates happy couples from unhappy couples is actually not so much the negative. It's not that they're fighting more often, but often it is the positive. Happy couples accentuate the positive. They do a lot of positive. And this doesn't necessarily come easy. It's not that they necessarily may naturally have more positive reactions, but they report sort of working to sort of create opportunities for positive. So I think this sort of offers us some ways to think about how we might want to better support families and create some opportunities for families. I'm going to hold on to that. I'm going to talk about implications in a minute. But first, I just want to talk about one last finding. We wanted to also look at sort of the so what. So if we see some of these differences and these daily couple experiences, does it matter? Does what happens with your partner on any given day, is that going to be related to how you feel, how happy or sad you are that day? And so we just looked at this. We looked at sort of all the different daily couple interactions that I just talked about, and then parent mood. What we found is that these are very closely linked. So what happens with your partner is very closely tied to how you feel from one day to the next. And in particular, we saw the strongest links between daily negative couple interactions, so the anger, the frustration, the ignoring, and partner closeness, so how connected or how much of that intimacy you felt that day with your partner, and how happy or sad you were that day. We also interestingly found that these associations were stronger in our families who had a child on the spectrum. So you can kind of see this in the graphs below here. So in the first graph, you can see that for both of our groups, so we have families who have a child on the spectrum, sort of in the solid line, and our comparison group in the dotted line. You can see for both groups that on days they spent more time with their partner, their negative mood goes down, right? So they're reporting that they were less upset, less disappointed that day, felt less fatigued that day. But what you can see is that this slope, this line, is much steeper for our families who have a child on the spectrum. So that means that these things are more tightly connected. So having a bad day with your partner is going to shape your mood more for families on the spectrum than it did for comparison group families. You can see the same pattern mirrored here. So for both groups, on days they felt closer to their partner, they also reported lower negative mood. But again, the slope is much steeper for our families who had a child on the spectrum. And in thinking about this finding, we kind of went back to other literatures that have looked at sort of these connections. And there is sort of a lot of evidence that for people in a context who are under a lot of demands, the social relationships in your life and the coping resources in your life become particularly important. So we see that the partner relationship has a stronger influence over mental health and mood, for example, in families who are under financial stress or who are families in which one partner is dealing with a lot of work stress. And so, kind of when resources are tapped, you really are going to look to those social relationships, right? And that's really going to be a key source for you. So I think in thinking about families who have a child on the spectrum, again, this may not be true for all families, but for some families, figuring out ways that we can help strengthen opportunities so that couples can use their partner to build in coping resources may be an important way to support families. Hold on, let's see if I can transition this. So I think in terms of implications, our data is suggesting both some vulnerabilities, these tend to be limited in scope, but also a lot of strengths, right? Even with spending less time with partner, we see this really high level of supporting one another, of working together. We see a lot of families in our study who are thriving and who are really using each other in positive ways and are reporting much more joy than they are parenting trials. That said, we also do see some obstacles. In terms of the couple relationship, we see some unique obstacles to just being able to spend time with your partner that may be unique in families who have a child on the spectrum that we may not see to the same degree in other families. And with more limited time, what's going to go to the curbside? Well, it may be time to just sit and share feelings and thoughts. And I think the tendency is to just spend all your time with your partner to just put out the flames of everyday problems, right? Let's just organize, let's figure out what's going on, let's create the plan for tomorrow. And so what may be harder to do is some of these positive interactions. I also think, again, there's a lot of opportunity to look at this couple relationship as really this resource for supporting one another and providing good resource for wellness. I always like to say in our study, we only recruited families who had two parents, and that's only because we had specific questions around the couple relationship, and we have some specific questions around mother-father differences. By no means is this any indication that a single-parent household is not going to thrive, because we all have examples that we know that can be a wonderful situation as well. But some of the resources and experiences and needs might be different in those families. In terms of applications, I always think one responsibility of researchers is to make sure that we're always debunking myths, right, and disseminating research. So by no means are these broken families. By no means are these couples fated for divorce. By no means is having a child this stressful, horrible experience, right? We see families who have so many varied experiences, both in terms of these strengths, we see vulnerabilities, but I think it's such an important message that we're really sort of communicating that we see both ends of this, right? And we see tremendous diversity. I think for clinicians and providers and parents, it's important that we're all acknowledging the multiple demands, that there are some unique things about day-to-day life. There are some unique demands, and so this is going to shape family dynamics in some unique ways. You know, I think I'm not naive enough to suggest that we should be saying that all families should try to spend more time with their partner and engage in more positive interactions. I think we all know you have limited hours in the day, right? And I think that is not going to necessarily be a useful path forward. But I do think we could think about ways to have families share with each other small tips if there is ways to build in opportunities in really manageable ways, right? So over the lunch hour, sending a text to your partner to share a joke. Spending 5 minutes before you go to bed to make sure you're not talking about planning for the next day or problems, but just to share a thought or a feeling, or to share a short story about your day. I also think it's important to realize that these things can be achieved with not just alone couple time, but this could be planning a fun family day. That you're doing a positive interaction with not just your partner, but also your child, right? Or other family members. So I think there's a lot of different ways we can think about building in more opportunities to try to achieve this. In terms of couple therapy, I think our pattern has some important implications for directing clinicians. The pattern that we're seeing, I think, makes me think that clinicians might want to consider acceptance and change-based therapies for couples who are dissatisfied in their relationship. These are nice therapies that are going to build on the fact that a lot of couples don't have this built-up resentment. It's just they have a lot of obstacles to sort of building in the positivity and the intimacy. And that might be a nice thing to at least consider. It may not be relevant for all couples, again, who are dissatisfied, but something to consider. I also think there's lots of opportunities where we're trying to go next with our research is really learning from the couples who are thriving, right? One of my favorite quotes, I think, from the families was from a father, and I'm going to have to kind of paraphrase here, but he said, essentially, I feel like I won the lottery, and every time I get frustrated with her, she'll turn around and do something to make me fall in love with her all over again. And if that's not a family that we should, sort of learn from, I don't know what is, right? So I think, we're trying to really understand sort of what's about these families that can really help us understand families who are struggling more. And so just briefly, excuse me, I have a cold here. Some of the things we're finding is that for families who are thriving and are feeling pretty close, they are reporting more positive interactions at a daily level. When we observe them, they're using a lot of empathy. So they're doing a ton of reflecting back to each other of saying, I hear you, I hear this is where you're coming from. They're doing that a ton, even if they disagree. And they're having, they have just as many couple disagreements at a daily level as the other couple. So it's not that they're disagreeing less, they're just going about it differently. We're also getting some early findings that humor is being used a lot. So to deal with some of these challenges, they're bringing in humor in effective ways to work with each other. And I think perhaps kind of lighten sometimes that mood to get them through a situation. So those are some of our early findings, but again, one of our goals is to really learn from these families, and so we can better understand social policies and interventions to support families who are not thriving. Did I hold on one sec, guys? Let's try this. Oh, okay, I do want to go there. So these are the two papers that I drew a lot of kind of the things that I talked about today from, but on our lab website, we have links to all the other studies that we're doing, and we'll try to update it to get the research out there as quickly as possible. This research takes a lot of collaborators, and so a lot of both investigators and faculty here at UW, a ton of students who are really the ones doing the hard work and are the ones sort of running these studies and going into homes. And of course, we're funded by the National Institute of Health. We've also gotten some funding from UW-Madison here. And we are so grateful to the families who invite us into their homes and are willing to share stories and talk about different subject matter so that we can learn from them. And I'll just end here. This is a slide with students who have been involved in this study over the years. So I think we have some time for a few questions before break. I know we're running a little over.
Questions?
Yeah.
I'm a speech therapist, and one of my students' mother gets. I'm a speech therapist, and one of my students' mothers gets funding for respite care. But who does she turn to? Where? So she gets this money, and she's just giving it to family to watch her child, but she would have liked to have spent that time with her family without her child. Is there anything, I'm from the Milwaukee area, is there anything that you know of that we could tap into to help her and some other families as well?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that's the story we hear so often. And so we do have so a lot of families will get certain number of hours of respite care per month. And a lot of families will say, well, this is lovely in theory, but I can't find anyone to be a good respite care provider, so it does me no good at all. And so they're having to turn to family, or they're, and so it's really hard to do private date nights or a couple time. So this is something that I'll turn to some of our Wasteman Center resource staff. They might have some good examples. I'm not quite sure in Milwaukee. But I know that there definitely are some programs that people are aware of this issue, that it's, you can't just carve out money but not have any decent respite care providers. It's crazy, and that often falls apart. And so I know in Madison here there's a couple of good companies who are really aware of that and have gone out of their way to change how they provide respite, how they hook families up to do a lot more on the front end. But maybe I'll connect you with Teresa after, because she might know of some places in Milwaukee. Oh, Teresa, right behind you. Show the great question.
Hi. My husband and I, we feel like we're a really good team for the most part, but when we get under some stress and we get kind of tired, we find that we don't feel like we're being very supportive of each other. I was wondering if you had any suggestions for helping each other feel more supported in daily life. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another thing that we see a lot in these quotes, right? That I love my partner, and when things are good, it's easy, but it's harder when life happens and your resources are drained. And I think from drawing from sort of the broader couple relationship world, what they really say is sort of it's forcing yourself to get in the habit to still kiss or say goodbye to your partner even on the days when you're not necessarily, you wouldn't want to do that, right? Or you're just stressed, you just want to get to work, and taking the time to still sort of engage in these really small opportunities to build that connection. So a lot of the research will suggest that it's sort of about forcing yourself to sort of create that positivity, if you can, in little degrees. They also talk about empathy. It's building on the natural thing that you and your husband do have this connection, and sort of taking the time, just 5 minutes, to sort of sit down and connect for a minute. It can be some strategies. But I'm definitely, on our website, we also can put up some links. So in the marital world, they have a lot of strategies that they'll talk about, taking little breaks if you guys are frustrated and coming back to a conversation. Forcing yourself to table a discussion that might be really difficult and talking about something you guys both agree on and it's kind of fun. So getting yourself, lightening that mood a little bit, refocusing, and then coming back maybe on a day that you're less stressed to talk about a major decision. If you have to talk about, we're struggling with the teachers in the school system, it's really not working. This is a big issue for us. It's kind of a hot point because we kind of come at this differently. Tabling that until you guys are sort of have a little bit more emotional resources to deal with can be a good strategy as well. But yeah, I can put up some good citations because it's a critical issue.
I also just want to be mindful of time. Sigan, will you be around a little bit if you have questions? So we're going to take a brief break right now and then transition to Model Warfare Next Center. So if you want to take 5 minutes, the restrooms are